Chapter 29, Cell Theory and Cell Structure. Cell Theory. Cells are the basic building blocks of life. Every living thing is made of cells. The smallest living organisms are made of a single cell. Also, different cells can perform different functions. For example, a muscle cell performs a different function than a stomach cell does. Cells are really tiny, so they can't be seen with the naked eye. They were first discovered with the invention of microscopes, and Robert Hooke observed the first cell in the 1660s. In time, scientists put their observations together to come up with the cell theory. 3 statements. All organisms are made of cells, one or more. The cell is the basic building block of life in structure and function. Every cell comes from another existing cell. Cells divide to form new cells. Because an organism can be made up of one cell alone, think of all the functions a tiny little cell must be able to perform. It needs to be able to consume, store, and use energy, protect itself, and reproduce. Different structures within the cell help it perform all of the functions necessary to survive. Here in this blue box it says think of a cell as a factory. Each structure is like a machine that performs a different function to keeping the factory running. Organelles. Organelles are the parts of a cell. They do a range of things, including process and release energy, destroy and digest materials, replicate genetic information. So here we have the images of a typical plant cell. We have the cytoplasm, a vacuole, mitochondria, the nucleolus, which is inside the nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, ribosomes, Golgi bodies, chloroplast, the cell wall, and the cell membrane. And that looks different than a typical animal cell. We also have the nucleolus inside the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, vacuole, much smaller, ribosomes, Golgi bodies, the nuclear membrane, mitochondrion, cell membrane, and the cytoplasm. Organelles include, this is going from the outside to the inside of the cell, a cell membrane. Every cell has a cell membrane, which is a layer on the outside of the cell that holds the cell together. It also controls the flow of material in and out of the cell, like a gate to the castle. It is semi-permeable, also known as selectively permeable, which means it can let certain stuff through and keep other things out or in. The cell wall. In addition to the cell membrane, plants, algae, fungi, and some bacteria also have a cell wall. Think of the cell wall as a highly fortified castle wall. It is a tough and rigid outer layer that protects the cell and gives it shape. Many cell walls, especially in plants, are made up of a carbohydrate called cellulose, which comes in long threads of fiber that allow water and other materials through. Other species have cell walls made of various other substances. Chitin in fungi, peptidoglycan in bacteria, etc. Then we have cytoplasm. That's a jelly-like substance called cytoplasm, is inside the cell wall. All of the structures, organelles, and activities are contained in the cytoplasm. The cytoskeleton, which is made up of thin protein fibers and hollow protein tubes, maintains structure and helps things move around in the cell. Ribosomes. Ribosomes are the protein-making factories in a cell. Proteins are an essential part of every cell. They are found in the most structural components, and they are also a part of major reactions that take place in the cell. Ribosomes receive directions from heredity material to make certain proteins. The nucleus. The nucleus is the control center of the cell. It houses the cell's chromosomes, which are strands made of DNA. deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the code for genetic information. The nucleus also includes nuclear membrane, which is a protective double membrane surrounding the nucleus that controls the flow of materials in and out of the nucleus. The nucleolus is a small structure found inside the nucleus that makes ribosomes and transports them to the cytoplasm. Vacuoles. Vacuoles are temporary storage bubbles for the cell. They store water, food, and waste. In plant cells, these can be huge. The lysosome. A lysosome is like the cell's garbage and recycling facility. It has chemicals to break down food, cell waste, and foreign particles that enter the cell, such as bacteria and viruses. It digests and destroys dead cells or old cell parts, as well as recycles material that make other cells. The mighty mitochondria. The mitochondria are the cell's powerhouse. They release energy in food by carrying out a reaction with oxygen. Cells that need more energy, like muscle cells, have a larger number of mitochondria. The endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, is the transport facility for the cell. It is made of folded membranes and it processes and moves materials. The Golgi bodies are the packaging, sorting, and distributing facility. They sort proteins and other products from the ER, endoplasmic reticulum, then package and distribute them to where they need to go. Chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are in plant cells only. They're the food production structures that contain chlorophyll, which is a green pigment that makes plants look green and also uses energy from the sun to change water and carbon dioxide into glucose, a simple sugar. There are two main types of cells, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. The main difference is that prokaryotes do not have a membrane-bound nucleus, mitochondria, or organelles, while eukaryotes do. Prokaryotic cells are very simple and are found in single-cell bacteria. Eukaryotic cells are much more complex and found in protists, fungi, animals, and plants. Remember, prokaryotes rhymes with no, which means they have no nucleus and no membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotes rhymes with do, because eukaryotes do have a nucleus and do have membrane-bound organelles. So now we get into animal cells versus plant cells. Animal and plant cells are similar in many ways, but they have their differences. Every plant cell has a cell wall, the rigid barrier made out of cellulose that surrounds the cell membrane. If animals had these, we might be crunchy. Most animals have some sort of skeleton instead. Plant cells have chloroplasts to produce food from sunlight. If animals had these, we would just sit outside in the sun for lunch. Plant cells usually have a large central vacuole for storage that takes up a lot of space. If animals had these, we could go a lot longer without food and water. Then you have multicellular organisms. Multicellular plants and animals have different cells to carry out different functions. A bunch of different cells doing a similar job are called a tissue. Tissues work together to form organs, such as the heart, stomach, or liver. Organs working together form organ systems, such as the digestive or respiratory system. We'll learn more about this after winter break. So now you're going to check your knowledge. I'd like you to either answer right next to the question or go ahead and copy these questions into another page in Notability so you can answer them. But number 1 asks you to explain the cell theory. Remember, there are 3 statements of the cell theory, and that was at the beginning of this chapter. Number 2, The blank is the control center of a cell. Which organelle is the control center of a cell? Number 3, what does the nuclear membrane do? Number 4, plant cells have cell walls made of blank that provide structural support. Number 5, what do mitochondria do? Number 6, plant cells have blank, the organelle that contains a green pigment called blank, which produces food from sunlight. Number 7, explain what a lysosome does. Number 8, the cell stores food and waste in which organelle? Number 9, ribosomes receive directions from hereditary material to make certain blank. Number 10, a bunch of different cells doing a similar job are called what? So go ahead, answer these questions, and then submit this whole document to in Schoology to reading chapter 29. If you have any questions, let me know.